I'm Mel.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Beck. And this is We Are Woman.
Food is something all of us engage with every single day. And yet, for a lot of women, our relationship can become surprisingly complicated. There's so much information about what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, what's good for us this week, and what suddenly isn't the next. And when you're already juggling work, family, life, and everything in between, it can start to feel like just another thing you're supposed to get right. On this podcast, we talk about all the different parts of being a woman, the emotional, the psychological, the relational. And today we're bringing in some attention to something that's just as important, our physical body and our health. Because the body is where all of life is actually happening. Today we're joined by Amanda Powell. Amanda is an accredited nutritionist with over 15 years of experience specialising in women's health, particularly around body composition, gut health, and nervous system regulation. She's also a busy mum of two, so she understands what it really looks like to try and prioritise health in the middle of real life. Amanda's approach is about making health feel simple, realistic, and actually doable. After navigating some of her own health challenges, she's passionate about helping women feel more energized, more balanced, and more in control of their well-being without all of the overwhelm. In today's conversation, we'll explore nutrition, but also the bigger picture, how stress, lifestyle, and the way we live our lives can shape our relationship with food and our bodies. As always, you don't need to analyze anything as you listen. Just notice what resonates, notice what feels familiar, and let's get into the conversation. Thanks so much for being here, Amanda. So glad to have you. I've been really interested and fascinated with your work and just some of the really great content you've been sharing. And we thought because we're talking about women in this really beautiful, holistic way, it's so important to talk about the parts which we're not necessarily the experts on. So bringing in yourself and other experts along the way. I think the best place to start is maybe just tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I guess my story to becoming a nutritionist started in my teens. I was very sporty teenager, very keen netballer and rower. So if you know rowing as a sport, it's very demanding on your body physically and obviously in terms of nutrition. So around age 16, coming into my final year of school and final year of rowing, I'd been made rowing captain, which was my dream. But in that year leading into it, I got glandular fever. And also during that time, I was not feeling my body properly. So some restrictive eating patterns had started. A lot of body image stuff going on, in that kind of year 11 period of school. So I was not feeling good. My energy was low. My immune system was low. And to be honest, a lot of the doctors said you probably won't be able to row in your final season, which
Mm.
was my absolute worst nightmare. So my mum could kind of see what was going on, but she kind of used that motivation with my sport and just said, come on, let's go see this nutritionist. She's a naturopath as well, so she's holistically minded, and she might help us. So we went to see her and she honestly changed everything for me. She was amazing. So instead of, focusing on the restrictive eating that was going on, she started educating me around food as medicine and what your body needs to be fueled and for energy and for your immune system and for your liver. So when you've had glandular fever, it's a virus that affects your liver, for example. So beetroot's really good for your liver. So she was like, right, I want you to get up each morning and make a fresh beetroot, carrot, celery, and apple juice. And that's really awesome for your liver. It's going to give you the nutrients that you need. And she just fed little changes like that, but she changed my whole perspective, which obviously I had this reward punishment cycle going on that I needed to restrict to, reach a certain body image. She flipped that to food is medicine. We need it to fuel us, to nourish us. And she found my motivation, obviously, which is really important with my rowing. And my mum went out and got a juicer and she did everything with me. And she got me eating properly again. So not only did she get me eating properly, but she changed the way I looked at food. And I just found that really, really powerful. And it's just a lesson that I carried through the rest of my teens and then found myself in advertising in my 20s, partying, burnt out. And I was like, oh, I know what to do. I'm going to start, eating well and juicing again and doing all these things. And I just thought, you know what? This is so powerful. I want to do this.
Mm.
So I went back and studied nutritional medicine and did another degree. And then I've been doing it for 15 years now, and I absolutely love it. It's not a job. For me, it's a real philosophy and a way of being. Yeah.
When you changed your relationship with food and it went from this sort of reward and punishment style to actually food as nourishment, what were some of the changes you noticed internally?
I definitely found that I would catch myself. When you've had a history of restrictive eating, it's not something that actually really goes away. So in periods of stress, it will flare up again. It will come to my mind, but I'd stop myself and say, no, that's not going to nourish my body. That's not good for my body. My body needs these nutrients and it needs this for my hormones or for my energy, for my immune system. And I'm actually going to nourish my body instead. So it's broken that kind of pattern. I think it's that awareness when it comes to emotional eating as well. It's that kind of awareness of, okay, you're going to this food for a reason, or you're going to eat for a reason. Well, I'm going to choose something that's going to nourish my body. So I think it really changed that kind of approach in terms of let's support and look after my body with food rather than punish it with food.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I can imagine, Sarah, you've had some experience you might like to speak to as well, just working in the modeling industry. And I wonder if you've been able to change your relationship with food through the last few years outside as well.
Yeah, thank you, Beck, and thank you, Amanda. I'm very inspired already by what you shared, so I'm really curious to learn more in this conversation. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that reward punishment system. I think that's pretty much for me, that was sort of the strongest, maybe psychological game that somehow was sort of playing out. That was like, oh, this is like, it wasn't always there. And somehow it developed. And somehow there was this, yeah, it seemed like a reverse system in my mind of like, if I do X, Y, Z, then I'll get my reward. Or for me it was mainly just, yeah, restrictive eating, so it wasn't going flip-floppy so much, which I think like I hear a lot of stories around that, which seems very difficult as well. But yeah, obviously in the modeling industry there were super high standards on, so I can relate to what you're sharing, Amanda, around like, I guess in sports and so on, there can sometimes be high standards around what the body is used for, I guess. Like, and I think that was for me, that was my main story, was like my body became a product. So instead of seeing my body as a system that supports me in life, it became a product to sell. And so I think that really changed my relationship with my body. And yeah, I'm super curious to learn from you, Amanda, of like, what were some of the things that you see working with people around you? What I know for myself really worked was actually coming more into the present moment. I know it sounds maybe a little bit simple and weird, but that was really like the actual connection with my signals of my body again, as opposed to overriding it with my mind. And I guess getting trapped in that punishment reward system, actually coming more into the present moment and smelling the food and tasting it, and really sort of coming into my senses again. And that for me, it was quite deep, actually. For me, it was also a journey into coming back to life again. And as I discovered my own journey with this more, it was almost around, was I really fully willing to live? I think that was almost my deeper inquiry into that. And yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm just sharing a little bit of my story now, but yeah, I'm super curious to hear from you what your perspective and experience has been around, yeah, what are some of the tools or practices you use with the people that you work with that you've seen work best? I guess I shared a little bit of mine, which was really around present moment, enjoyment, and awareness of my body and the sensations. And yeah, super curious to hear if there's any other tools or practices you've used and or what you've seen work in your practice.
Yeah. I mean, when you were just talking about your body as a product, I mean, how disconnected.
Hmm.
So yeah, not surprising you felt like that. Yeah, so the biggest thing, I mean, the typical client I see, I get women come in, they're usually in their 40s or 50s, and they sit down on the chair and they say to me, I don't want to diet. I've been dieting my whole life. Um, I want you to teach me how to eat. I don't know how to eat. And I
Mm.
always find that, and it's so common, I hear that weekly. And, it makes me almost want to cry that we're getting to our 40s and 50s and we're sitting down and saying, can you teach me how to eat properly? How disconnected we are. I think, as you said, Sarah, we're in our mind of, I should do this, I should eat this, and I need to restrict to equal this. We're not just connecting in with our intuition around our food and trusting our bodies as well, and understanding that they're not working against us. If for some reason, if someone's goal perhaps is weight loss and they're not losing the weight, they come in, they're quite frustrated with their bodies. And I'm like, no, this is a signal. Something's out of balance. If you're eating all the right foods, and a lot of them are really aware. Most people, they know how to eat these days.
Mm.
I'm not actually changing that much in terms of educating on whole foods. Luckily, the wellness industry has done that for me in the last 15 years. There's been a big shift there. I don't have to convince people anymore like I used to. But now it's how much they're eating, when they're eating, and honestly, it's their nervous system. It's their nervous system regulation that is key. I'd say 90% of the time, I am talking about regulating their nervous system and getting their
Mm.
cortisol levels down.
Mm.
And I think the reason that people find that challenging is that's big changes. What? Change my job, change my relationship, change how I think, how I breathe. That's
Mm-hmm.
huge stuff as well. So I find that really challenging. But the toolkit would be sleep. Start
Mm-hmm.
with sleep. Nervous system regulation, movement, but movement that's right for their body, for where they're at, depending on what is happening with their nervous system. They are really key foundations to helping them with their health. And also educating them on why. And obviously, people are eating pretty well, but often they're not eating at the right times, not within their right rhythm of the day. And that's really important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to that, Amanda. And what comes up for me is almost this maybe dissonance between intuition and also a healthy, I guess, schedule. Because what you're saying is like eating around the right time and so on. And I know for myself, as an example, is that my intuition was really off at some point. Like I couldn't really trust my intuition anymore because it was just so distorted. And but now I feel personally, I really feel I'm in this place where I'm very much just in my intuition and I kind of eat from that place. And sometimes that means eating way more than other times or sometimes even at different times of the day or a very different kind of food, but it feels really connected. And so I'm curious around when you, I guess, give more these like, yeah, eat at this time of day or eat this particular type of food, how do you see that being supportive for someone also maybe tapping more into their intuition as well alongside as having a plan? Because I think yeah, if you're so disconnected from your intuition, you kind of need a bit of a plan, right? In order to actually come back to what is even just normal eating, I guess, or healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess a lot of what I do is actually bringing someone's cortisol and insulin levels down. Because as long
Mm.
as their cortisol is high and their insulin levels are high, their blood sugars are dysregulated. Because I guess I work from a real practical point of view, then they're not going to be able to think straight and make the right decisions. And so that's where I really come from and really support their body from that physiological level. We do talk about obviously mindset and nervous system and sleep and all of that, but I can really help them understand not just eat protein, why are we eating protein and when to eat it, and how that's going to stabilize their blood sugars, and they're going to make better food choices throughout the day and also feel more regulated in the evening. And that's sort of, I think, the best advice and the best sort of support that I can give people.
Yeah, thank you so much for speaking to that. It sounds like the emphasis on the nervous system and regulation, the way I would, I guess, link that to some of the work that we do with breath work as well, is that there's a really big focus of using the breath as a vehicle to regulate the nervous system, right? To kind of come into more homeostasis in the body. And what I hear from clients that I work with and what I've experienced in myself is like, it's through the regulation that we find safety in our bodies again. And from a place of safety, we just make very different choices and we feel and see ourselves and the world very differently. So I love that you're bringing that in, because you're kind of using food as a way of regulating the system again, and actually, what does it feel to just be in our bodies and feel relaxed and safe, I guess. And then let the choices come from that place more, with guidance and support around that. Yeah, is that sort of how I can understand it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, it is regulating your body through the nutrition, and things do fall into place. There is that element of trust. Sometimes when I ask someone, these are the changes I want you to make, usually I'm getting them to eat more at the beginning of the day, because often they're not eating enough, not eating enough, and then the evening, they crash, and they're binge eating in the afternoon and the evening. And it's really interesting because, especially with women, when I ask them, okay, I want you to eat a really big lunch and I want you to have like a really decent breakfast, and I'm actually increasing what they're currently eating, they freak out. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to eat more earlier in the day. And so I'm eating more at breakfast. I'm like, you're eating more at breakfast. You're not skipping breakfast anymore. And you can see that moment of, but what if I still overeat a lot in the evening? Then I'm going to be eating more. I'm like, trust me and trust your body that you're not going to. So, and it always works out, but there is that little like leap of, okay, because you are breaking some habits at the same time. Of course, there's some habits there we've got to break alongside, but there is that kind of trust that your body will regulate itself, just as you girls see with the breath, it will regulate it as well with the nutrition. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for speaking to the breakfast piece, because there's a whole lot of, I guess, trends out there as well around intermittent fasting and all of these kind of things, which, from my understanding, most of the research has been done on men and actually not on women. So it's and female hormones just work very differently. So there's a lot of, I think, misperception around that. I don't know too much about it, so I don't want to speak too much about it, but from my understanding, there's a lot of misinformation around that. And what comes up for me is this piece around what we do with breathwork as well, and what you do through nutrition, right? It's like having someone actually come back into the body and feeling safe. And I think breakfast does that. Like, and the reason I say that is because it's like feeling safe right now to eat right now, as opposed to later. Or what I know for myself, it was almost this pattern of, I need to first get all of my tasks done and then I'll eat. As opposed to, no, actually the nourishment can come now in my body. And from the nourished place, I'll move through the day and get all the things done I want to get done, in my life. And I think that is such a big rewiring. And I've seen it with my clients as well, of like, actually, you are worthy now. And from that place, you can do and create things in the world that you want. And I think there's a really big psychological piece to it as well, where I think it comes a lot down to worth as well, like just our own sense of worthiness. And maybe we can go into feelings of shame around body image and so on as well. But yeah, like something around actually feeling safe for some people is also scary, is what I've noticed. Like that feeling of safety initially can feel really weird, because it's like, that's what I experienced as well. It's like, I'm not motivated as I was before, because I'm not so on high alert actually, but that is actually a good thing. I'm actually now more doing things from a way more relaxed place. But that shift for me was massive, to come from not high alert fight flight mode into my workday, and actually come from just a nourished place and be like, okay, I'm now showing up and doing my emails all the things I need to get done. I remember that transition phase was quite difficult because it felt like I wasn't doing enough or wasn't motivated enough. And so there is, I think, a piece around the safety can almost feel unsafe in the beginning, even though it actually creates like stability and safety and regulation in the system. What has your experience been with working with people in that, and how do you maybe navigate that initial shift?
No, yeah, I agree. It's unfamiliar, and they've taught themselves or they've learnt a behaviour from perhaps their childhood, whether they've observed it through their mum or their family. It's a deep-rooted thing for women, obviously, that we have this mindset that we need to restrict or reward ourselves with food. And so it is trusting that. And yeah, learning to nourish. I think it's that shift in terms of what you're talking about, nourishing yourself. And I think taking that leap, but for me, it's really, I go on to the physical benefits with the clients. I sort of say, okay, do you understand why I want you to eat a protein-rich breakfast? You know, there's a lot now out there. Eat protein, eat protein. Oh my gosh, I saw a meme the other day and it was like, I've got so much to do on my checklist and now eating protein's one of them. It's so funny. I think that's what a lot of people feel like these days. But why do you need to eat protein, and how is it going to help you throughout the day? You know, how does it stabilize your blood sugar levels? I explain that. I explain literally how it brings your glycemic index down of food, like in your food that you're eating, and what that's going to do for the person all day, and how that's going to help with how they feel in the evening and then how they sleep. And for me, I think it's when they understand the why, then they're more motivated to do it. And in my practice, I don't just say, eat this, eat that. I'll give them examples, but it's always the why. They're not going to change it otherwise. They need to understand. And it's also, my passion is to empower women. You know, I see sometimes people a bit, not hesitant, but sort of, oh, well, isn't seeing a nutritionist almost, I don't know, maybe encouraging that controlled eating in a way, like, are you overthinking eating? You're not going from your intuition. Well, I don't see it like that. I see it as empowering, because for me, it took all that stress and like, what am I meant to be doing away when I was empowered with the knowledge of what to do and why and how that's going to nourish me and how I'm going to feel. I found that really empowering personally. So it's always the why, and always small changes as well, always really small, and understanding and being compassionate with people that this is a really big thing. There's a huge emotional connection here with their food. And just like when you're taking something away, perhaps if you get someone who's having 8 cups of tea a day, you know, it's not just you can't have tea, it's reducing slowly, it's small changes.
I love that you bring in the why, Amanda, because as I'm sitting here listening to you speak, I knew, Sarah, what you brought in before. It's interesting, and I wonder if some of our listeners will be able to resonate with this, but I wouldn't say I have a really intense or obvious relationship with food. I can't say to my knowledge that there's been a reward or a punishment system play out. But what I can say is I've probably gone the other way and almost completely ignored it. I don't overthink my eating. I don't track it. But when I really sit with it, the pattern of not eating properly is definitely there. It's those busy days. It's not feeling safe enough to stop the rush to eat properly. It's eating quickly when I do get the chance and then never really tasting the food. Like I'm just go, go, go with my work, with my kids. I haven't eaten properly. And then if I do, probably couldn't even tell you what it had tasted like. So I'm definitely more aware of that now, but understanding the why behind why we need to eat properly. Like listening to you, Amanda, I'm realizing that food isn't just, what you should and shouldn't eat, as we've been talking about, or when to eat, but it's an active relationship with something, right? It's like it goes back to almost what Sarah said at the beginning, that present moment, because when I'm rushing and I'm in my head, I'm not in my body. I'm not making food choices that probably make sense. If anything, I'm not taking the time to appreciate what I'm eating. And Amanda, I couldn't even tell you if I ate protein in the moment. Like there's some times where I just have no idea what's going on. I'm literally just shoving food in to keep going, to keep the rush. And that probably speaks to that subtle disconnection from food that we were speaking to. And so it's not I don't consciously reward or punish myself, but I can definitely see that there's an underlying pattern of not really being with myself around food. And I speak to sort of like capable, high functioning women simply because that's what our podcast is. I'm sure there's males out there that do this as well. But yeah, it really feels like a disconnect, and I love understanding the why. I love that you're bringing that in, because this is motivation and it is empowering. So thank you for that.
I really love that description that I think everyone's used, but particularly you brought this in, Amanda, around food as nourishment. And I think even our language is such an important way to change our relationship with food as well. When food was fuel or food was used as punishment, whereas something like nourishment really, it comes back to something that we've spoken about a lot of times is, are we worth it? Are we worth the investment? Do we see ourselves as worth the investment? And when you're using language like nourishment, that feels like something that you would do for someone that you saw as valuable, to be able to sit there and take a mindful moment to gently eat your breakfast and really think about that in terms of nourishment. There's a book from, I think it's the 1990s maybe, and it's Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it's but I love the idea of, and it's not just about chicken soup, but but I love the idea of food for the soul, right? That we're sitting there and we're nourishing our bodies, but we're nourishing our soul, we're nourishing all of the parts of us by making time to sit and have breakfast, by really thinking about what's in it and making sure that it's really beautiful and healthy. And I think that really changes the frame that we're working with when we're talking about food. Something we do multiple times a day. And as Mel, you said, we often don't have a relationship with it, or our relationship's been really hit and miss for so many years, we don't know what food really means to us.
Yeah, and I even wonder if this is a reflection on, you know, a deeper conversation. And this is what's coming up for me. But where do I sit in my own life? If I can't stop and eat, then is it time to sort of like zoom out and think, where am I putting myself first? And where am I looking after myself? Or yeah, giving myself the nourishment back that you spoke to. Where do I fit there? Am I nourishing myself? I think that's a really important question for me here anyway today.
Yeah, and I think I see that in clinic, Mel, when you get a woman coming in and perhaps they're fatigued. They come in, I said, let's go do some their blood work. They might have low iron, low B12, because we also diagnose deficiencies. Sometimes their thyroid's gone out and they haven't realized. So there'll be obviously physiologically what's going on. They're usually those women. So they're waiting till something happens. And their body tells them, body never lies, body signals something's out, and they crash and burn. And whether it's a thyroid or hormonal imbalance or their iron levels drop, that brings them in. And they're like, oh, and then I'm like, okay. And then they learn from there, okay, this is what I need to do to nurture as well. Nurture is a great word. So I think we as women are nurturers, and we nurture our kids and, maybe husbands and family and people in our lives, our businesses. But we're the last person to nurture ourselves. And so really looking at as nurturing your body too. But yeah, I do find, Mel, it usually takes something physical to happen. And that will sort of bring that awareness. Oh, okay, that's the sort of changing point for those women sometimes.
Yeah. So this would be something that would similarly present, I suppose, being linked to a high functioning woman, I suppose.
Yeah. Pushing through. Love pushing through their health, and then it takes a physical change or a physical symptom or complete imbalance for them to actually have that awareness of what's going on, and then their change comes from there around food often.
Yeah, I love that. And then do we, as these high functioning women, do we unconsciously believe that everything else is more important to us before we get to ourselves? Or similarly to you, Sarah, when you spoke to, can we only value ourselves once everything's done? Then I'll sit down and eat. And
Yeah, it's like in life, sometimes it takes a big shift, or you girls would see in your line of work, it takes a a traumatic event or a loss or something to happen. I mean, you would be able to explain it better, but often I'm sure you see people after that who that's been a bit of a wake-up call for them perhaps to really look after their nervous system a bit more. And for me, it's probably to look after their physical health a bit more.
What comes up for me as well is it's kind of a systematic issue, I would say, as well, in the sense of like food used to be in our communities or in our tribes used to be a form of really connecting with one another and connecting with, I guess, the natural resources of the environment and connecting with ourselves and our bodies. So it's this whole piece around connection, just as the full spectrum of what connection means. And I find here when I live in Byron or close to Byron, and I go to the farmers markets, and it's such a beautiful experience. And that has actually changed a big part of my relationship to my food as well, actually going to the farmers market and enjoying the process of buying nourishing ingredients and food and connecting with the farmers directly. So not buying from the supermarket. And it just made the whole thing so much more enjoyable. And so I think like what I'm hearing is like a lot of our systems these days, particularly in the West, they're all more set up as a sort of, you have your food so that you can do other things. Like it's almost more of a backdrop thing of like, we have these things so that you can do other things, as opposed to actually like what is actually most important in our life. It's like, yeah, you kind of spoke to the man of like, what do we focus on first? Sleep, water, food and shelter, like those are, and connection, I guess, community and connection. But like, and there's so many other things these days in life that we also attending to, like work, and so there's just so much going on in our modern life. So how much, and then we focus, I guess, on breath, which is it seems like the whole world of, maybe not the whole world, maybe I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but a lot of people are getting tired of this outward focus energy and this sort of this disconnection from what is actually really important. And I think there's a shift happening as well in our, call it collective consciousness, that is about more really coming back to the basics again and to what is actually important. And food, is such an important part of that, right? And it's for me, it's like almost like, it's an individual shift in individuals, and it's also a collective kind of shift, I think, that needs to happen for it to really feel more nourishing, like just for all of us, like a nourishing, like a lot of our systems are about extraction as well. And so that's, I'm sure that ripples through in individuals and in our personal mindsets as well. And that then ripples through in how we handle food. Anyway, I was not sure I was going with that, but just the whole idea of like seeing the bigger picture, I guess, and just kind of, like coming back into connection with ourselves again and into the simplicity. And I feel like there's a big movement happening now where that is becoming more and more important. And Amanda, so beautiful. You're using food, I guess, as an avenue, coming back into connection again. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to ask. That's where I went with it. It's like, how in your, I guess, you're working with people and you're giving advice and so on, and how much do you also put any emphasis on, like, I guess the piece that I spoke to around maybe eating more with family or more with friends, or making it more of a pleasant experience, just the whole way of how we eat with other people and so on, or where we buy our food. And
definitely both those things. I think the two areas is where you purchase your food is really important. I love that, Sarah, how you're talking about the farmers markets. I mean, I completely agree. And you sort of you meet people where they're at a little bit, but it's a bit of a journey through their nutrition, and you sort of get them to the point where then you will be talking about, where you can go and purchase your food and buying whole foods and going to the farmers markets. And definitely I feel that's connects them more to food as medicine and whole foods, and understanding and just sitting down, that awareness and that presence with the food to shift that whole relationship with it is really important. Connection, sitting down, I do encourage, especially, someone who's got a family, always sit and eat with your children, especially, our sons and daughters, but how we talk about food's really important. And we're talking about nourishing and nurturing and the words. And I think that is so important for our kids. So sitting down at a family, eating with them, for yourself to connect, but also to display these habits and these examples to your children. So the word diet will never be used in my home, ever. When I was talking about before that I give the why to my clients, so I give the why to my kids as well. They're 7 and 5, but they still get the why. So, you know, for instance, the other day they had a kiwi fruit and I said, do you know this has got really good vitamin C and it's really good if you have a cold? Oh, okay. So I want to eat it, mummy. Can I try it? I'm like, yep. So I've always talked to my kids about what that food's doing for them. When we sit there and I serve up food, I'll say the carrots are good for your eyes. You know, the other night my son didn't want to eat the steak. I said, you know, it's protein. It's really good. It makes you strong, gives you energy so you can run around with your friends and play basketball. And he goes, okay, I want to do that. And he ate the entire steak. So I've always talked to my kids like that. And I think even as a family and with the connection with the food, look at the food on the table and what it's providing you. And when you understand what all those foods do for you, I know I've got that benefit as a nutritionist. I literally know all the superpowers of the foods as I talk about them. Yeah, it really changes the way you look at it and the way you connect with it and the way you eat it. I think, and that's where I just fell in love with nutrition. I just think it's really powerful. And then, of course, we cannot ignore that we have to have enjoyment with food. And, you know, I do get women coming in and they're like, oh, I ate that chocolate. I'm like, well, did you enjoy it? I mean, go for it. If you can eat that chocolate, but please don't feel any guilt or shame when you had that. Then sit there and enjoy it. Be conscious and aware. Why did I go and eat the chocolate or whatever it might be? If there's something there specific that they're trying to kick a habit, look at the why, what drove you there. And we might talk about that a bit more, but please don't have any guilt or shame around it and let's enjoy it as well. So we can't take the enjoyment away. We've got to make sure, and I'm very realistic and everything in moderation. So when clients say, so I can't have any of this, I'm like, no, absolutely you can have, like, you need to still enjoy your food. That's really important as well. So it's all the balance. But you need to form a healthy relationship with food, I think, to be able to reach that point.
Yeah, and I think when we're in a healthy relationship with our food, I'll speak for myself, but I tend to enjoy the things that I think my body also actually needs and wants and craves in that moment in a genuine way. And yeah, sometimes that is actually a piece of chocolate because that is what the body really wants. And sometimes that's, an apple or whatever else, right? And so, like almost, taking it away from the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, right? And really coming more into what feels genuinely, authentically right in the moment to eat. Yeah, thank you, Amanda.
I was just going to touch on women and our hormones as well. You know, I love little facts like this, but in the first half of our cycle, our appetite's actually a lot lower from day one of our period up until ovulation. And that's because our body doesn't actually need as much energy to function then, because hormonally the estrogen's high. But then from ovulation, our progesterone goes up. And I don't know if you women have noticed, but I get starving around ovulation, that second half of the cycle. I need to eat, and your body actually needs more carbohydrates and more glucose. So it's a great time to eat more carbs. And I think, again, once you understand that, when I did a little bit more study on the women's hormones and nutrition, I was like, oh, awesome. Okay, so now when I get that spike of hunger around ovulation, I'm like, oh, I'm ovulating, I'm making an egg. That takes a lot of energy. Yeah, I need to eat some more carbohydrates. That's why I'm craving this sugar. Actually, I'm not going to have sugar. I'm just going to go have some more carbs and some sweet potato and rice. I might have the chocolate later, but I will allow myself, knowing what my body needs, and it needs that energy for a reason. And I love that. I think, again, it's that knowledge around it. And so then that helps. I find that has helped a lot with my intuitive eating, is knowing why that's happening for my body and allowing to just roll with it. That's okay. Go with it. This is good.
Something that I'm really interested in that you spoke to early on is giving people these systems. And we've been talking about systems and being intuitive in the way we eat. And I really heard myself in the things that you were describing as well, as someone that was at times so restrictive in the way I ate. I really loved the systems, and the systems were really helpful. But then at one point I felt really tied to the system. And now I've gone back and I've sort of found my way back to the middle. But it was a little bit, we've talked about this before in our podcast, how sometimes with the polarities, if you're all the way over here, you almost slingshot yourself all the way over there, and you've got to find your way back to sort of a healthy middle. And I'm wondering if that's something that you see a lot where people, and maybe the question is, do you see it? But also, how do people find their way back to the middle in your experience? I think this might be a useful question for our listeners as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Beck, and I understand what you're saying. I see a lot of women who have gone from the spectrum of restriction to wanting to eat better, but then they become a bit more, obsessed, and that's becomes a bit clinical, tracking their macros, and that's almost a form of control again. So then they go, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat, nourish my body, nurture my body, but that almost goes the other way, and they start literally, it's unregulated. I'm going to have all the sugar because that's what I want. And it's almost this attitude of, it goes to the other extreme. And so they come in and they sort of say to me, well, I don't want to be restricted anymore. And I say, well, I'm not restricting you, but is that serving your body, sitting there eating a tub of ice cream after dinner? Like, how's that serving you? You can go to that mentality of, I'm not going to care about what I eat anymore. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. And that's a dangerous place to be in as well, because a few reasons. One, physically, it's going to affect your health in the eventually. You're going to, get spikes in your insulin, and you're going to, possibly become insulin resistant, for example, like that. But also I sort of say to them, how's that serving you? Whether physically or emotionally. One, how are you feeling emotionally after that? Are you feeling guilt and shame or not? That's okay if you're not. That's good if you're not. But physically, how are you feeling? Usually that's kind of the point where I go, oh, I don't feel great. I don't sleep well. I wake up exhausted. I'm like, because you're having a blood sugar crash in the middle of the night because you've binged a whole lot of sugar in the evening. It's just one example and a pattern I see a lot. And so how's that serving you the next day? So it's really looking, and then they do, oh, okay. Then they peel back a bit and they realize they come back to that middle point a bit. So I think that sometimes as I sit down, how's this food going to serve me right now?
And I really love that as well, because in my opinion, I think it's helpful for everyone to learn from someone like yourself, Amanda, to visit a nutritionist at least once in their lives because we are fed so much conflicting information. And even as Sarah said, it's not at all nuanced. So there's the latest fad, which is we all have to do the 16-8 diet now, where we only eat for this 8-hour window because this is the next health thing. And it's so hard to understand what's right for us with our nuanced body and what's going on in our system. So I really love the value of having systems the way you describe. And the systems have helped me to be able to go back more into the middle. At one stage, I was checking everything, which macros, this, that, and the other. But now I can kind of look at my meal and say, all right, I think that's got enough protein in it. There's enough carbs in it. At one stage, I wasn't eating any carbs because that was another fad that I came across at one time. So I really love the idea of having these systems. And I think what I've learned in my work is the importance of systems, and it's our relationship with the systems that make them work for us or can sometimes work against us.
Yeah. Yeah. And understanding how your body works. So it's personalized nutrition, and everyone who comes in, I'll do blood work, and depending on what they've come in for, maybe a hormone test as well. And so you're looking at how their body's functioning metabolically, what it needs, if their thyroid needs support, if their blood sugars need support, if their hormones need support. So I always say to clients, okay, 50% of what we're going to do is talking about your diet and lifestyle and making some practical changes there. But the other 50% is physiologically supporting your body. So what it needs to function better. And that's really important, is those two pieces or two worlds coming together. And then they know how to eat for their body, because unfortunately there are a million different diets out there, and the answer is There is no one answer. It is all personalized. I don't use diets. I don't use fasting for women generally, not if they're in the menstruating age. There is a place for intermittent fasting for sure, especially for men, and for postmenopausal women. There are, and if they're, you know, with insulin resistance, yeah, there's a benefit in short term to use it short term for them. But as Sarah said, all clinical trials, not just on fasting, but every single clinical trial on diets and nutrition are all on men, because women menstruate. And so we're not a constant variable for the study. So they can't use us. So there's a couple of studies on women, but honestly, they don't tend to use women as, for studies for that reason, because we're too variable. But that gives you the answer to our health. We're too variable, you know, and your eating needs to change over your cycle, like I touched on before. It needs to change over the cycle too. And you need to honor that.
Yeah, I love that we're speaking to this. What comes up for me is almost this, we're talking about systems and sort of rigidity versus more free flow, and like what's the healthy balance between all of these things. And what comes up for me as well is like, in different parts of our life, we have probably very different nutritional needs depending on what we're doing, if we want to get pregnant, how old we are, like what kind of exercise we do, like all of these variables that influence obviously how much and what we need to eat and so on. And what comes up for me is almost this, I think some of us, I know for myself at least, but I think I can generalize this, is that either I'm not going to either it just needs to kind of be simple in life and I just want to have an answer and do the thing every day kind of thing. I think most of us kind of just want to have a solution, quote unquote, and then do the thing to not have to think about it and let it be easy. And or some of us might flip the complete end, is like total restriction and total obsession with every little micronutrition that we're eating, right? And I think almost like what I'm hearing and everything that's being shared is just this really healthy recognition. As long as we're alive and we're in these human forms, we have a responsibility of looking after our bodies, and those needs change and fluctuate depending on a lot of different varieties in our life throughout our life. And there is a healthy, what would I call it? Like a healthy awareness and maybe alertness, but without being like afraid, but just a healthy like watchfulness about what we're doing. And that's always to some degree going to be there. And it's just maybe we will never really fully fall into like, now we know completely what to do and we don't even have to look at it at all, like there's throughout our life, because we change so much, and particularly for women, there's so many changes in our life with hormones and all of these things, that there is just going to be an element in us that needs to just focus on this. And it doesn't need to be a hypervigilant kind of focus, but it also doesn't need to be a complete disassociation of, it doesn't need to be focused on at all, right? And I think maybe that's what we're also talking about, is like, where's just the healthy middle ground, where we're attending to what we need to attend to, and we're also being loose and fluid in and around it as well. And maybe that leads to this balance, because sometimes for us to find balance again, we also need to be off balance a little bit, to be like, that doesn't work, and we've tried it for a while and it doesn't work, and that's fine. And as long as we can listen deeply enough and then adjust again, right? And it's that flexibility, that our willingness and ability to adjust, that makes us just pay attention to this in a healthy, nourishing way, and allows us to carry forward, I guess, some of the practices and teachings, if you will, not only for ourselves, but for those around us and our children and so on. And it's just, food is such an important central part of our life, and there is just focus that needs to be on it as well. And in a healthy way is kind of what I'm hearing with that. Thank you.
Something I'd love to bring in, Amanda, is how emotional eating can be seen as a regulation strategy rather than a failure of willpower. And just, bringing in that relationship between how cortisol and blood sugar and anxiety and stress can change hunger signals and cravings. And what's your take on that?
I mean, it's a massive, massive role. I'd say 90% of the clients I see, it's all about nervous system regulation. And that nervous system is what is basically the roadblock to them getting their goals and what they want to achieve, or perhaps driving their symptoms. So physiologically, you can look at what's going on. So cortisol actually suppresses leptin, which is our fullness hormone, but it drives the release of ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. So it disrupts the hunger hormones completely, increases hunger, suppresses the fullness one. So that also drives craving. So you'll crave specifically high fat, high sugar foods as well. And so it leads to overeating. So your leptin's low, so you don't switch off in terms of feeling full, and then you're overeating because your ghrelin is high. So cortisol will disrupt hunger hormones, but also drives your blood sugar levels high as well. So when you're in fight or flight, what does your body need for quick energy? Glucose. So actually your blood glucose levels will increase. Then we release insulin to try and bring that glucose into the cells for energy. So under chronic stress, insulin resistance will actually form. And then the other part is dopamine with emotional eating. So when you're saying regulation, yeah, we are trying to regulate ourselves because food is part of a reward system in the brain. No matter what you eat, it does trigger dopamine. Okay. Those comfort foods, high fat, high salt, and high sugar, actually see a higher release of dopamine from the brain than a whole food like a broccoli, for instance. So then we get in this loop of, I'm feeling stressed or discomfort right now. I'm going to eat this comfort food. I'm going to get a hit of dopamine. I'm self-soothing. And it continues because you're going to get more of that dopamine from those foods than from eating a plate of greens, for instance. So there is that element of looking after, regulating our nervous system, but actually you can't ignore what's physiologically happening in the body. And so we have to help shift that habit and that pattern, but also looking at regulating that cortisol. That is key. I would say 90-95% of the time, I'm sitting there saying, until we get you out of fight or flight, I can give you any dietary recommendation, any supplement under the sun, it's not going to work. It's not going to shift. And so I'm referring a lot to breathwork and other practitioners. So sometimes I won't work with someone unless they are seeing another practitioner to regulate their nervous system, actually a lot of the time. Yeah. And if we're doing everything nutritionally, I say to them, it's your nervous system. It's your nervous system. It's not going to shift. And it's frustrating for them and it's frustrating for me, but it is also the hardest thing for people to change. So
yeah, it's such an interesting thing that you bring that in, and because what's the chicken, what's the egg, right? Like it's almost like two things or multiple things need to happen at the same time for gradual change, which is as the food intake changes, whatever that might be, more breakfast, like you said, and different types of food, we'll regulate the nervous system, and at the same time the nervous system needs to be also regulated to a certain degree, I guess you can say, for that to actually be effective, right? So yeah, it's I guess we're looking at it from multiple angles at the same time. And yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned breath work as well. And when I read breath mechanics in people, and what I can definitely relate to in my own self as well, was that before I started breath work, I was not even breathing into my belly. Like I did not even know that was physically possible, so to speak, until a practitioner put their hand on my belly and actually invited me into breathing in that space. It was just not in my awareness. And so when I hear people coming to me with issues like you're mentioning around food and over and or underweight or any of these kind of things, the first place that I tend to work in is the organs and the organ function, and actually bringing more also the breath deeper into the pelvis and allowing more safety in their body. And then of course it really depends so much. Like I'm saying this is often, but definitely not always, because it is a lot of nuance to it, because it really depends on the type of patterns that are there and just whatever else might be present in an individual, and maybe also trauma, which is an influence on the nervous system. Like what is someone actually going through in life, or what have they been through, and all of that needs to be taken into consideration. But yeah, I love that we're having this conversation with you, because it often requires multiple practitioners to actually support a human fully coming back to life and coming back into their body in a full, nurturing and alive way. So yeah, the nervous system being so key to just our overall health, so important. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it any other way. You have to have multiple practitioners working with someone most of the time. I'm really passionate about that. Yeah.
Mm.
And thank you so much, Amanda, for opening up this conversation to a point where we can see that food and eating is so multi-layered. It's not a matter of I ate the wrong thing and I shouldn't have, and I'm going to shame myself and judge myself for that. Or, you know, on the flip side, more so myself, whereas like I'm busy and I'm rushing, so I don't have time to eat. There's more to it than just that, just those thoughts. It's a complex system. And I think this is why it really brings in that beautiful idea that this is a full whole relationship. It's a relationship, and it's not just one static thing. There's so many layers to this, and we can link this to our breath work, because as you said, Sarah, we see for me personally, the breath work has allowed my system to register when I'm in that over functioning mode, when I'm going. I'm less in that now, more so than ever, with the modalities and the tools that I now engage in. But that in itself, like if I can slow my system down and realize that there is not a danger in stopping, and even if the to-do list is still there and I can sit and eat, like that's just so much more of a complex decision than, oh, I should have eaten, but I was too busy. There's just so much more to it. And I love that you're bringing this in. It feels really important and empowering and enriching to know that it's not just that one static thing. There's layers to this.
Yeah, what's going on for your body physiologically,
Yeah.
and how you can nurture it. And for me, yeah, I think that has brought me and my clients that I work with back into their bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And how healing.
yeah, not just
Mm.
intellectualizing it, feeling it.
Yeah.
And when they see the changes, that's when it's cemented. That's when
Yeah.
you see the change. Oh my gosh, man, I'm sleeping now. I'm waking up
Yeah.
refreshed. I love that I don't go and binge eat now in the evenings, because actually that was making me feel, you know, crap on many levels, physically and
Dysregulated.
dysregulated. Yeah. So, I think that's beautiful, but they've got to make the changes, and then you've got to see the change in your body, but it brings you back to your body, I believe, and really connects you, because then I think someone mentioned before, sometimes you need to be out of balance to really see, and then you go, whoa, I was so out of balance. And then I have clients come in and they're like, oh, been, off the wagon, or a bit, I've been gone for a couple of months, I'm back, I did this and I went a bit off. I said, great, good.
Yeah.
How did you feel? They're like, yeah, I didn't feel good. I'm like, that's a good thing. That's
Mm.
a good thing. I think it's great to go off. And then they realize, actually, I was feeling amazing when I was taking my supplements and doing this and that. And then from then on, you tend to see them move forward with everything. And I think that's life. We're all going to go back and forward. But I think it's just that it brings us back to awareness, if anything.
And maybe that's the actual health, that we can sometimes fall off the wagon, so to speak, or move sideways a little bit, but not actually then go into that punishment reward system, and actually just allow, there's just a period of life, there's might be a lot of other things going on, and I think it's in the allowing of just the fluidity of life sometimes, and then we come back again. We can trust that we can pull ourselves in again if we need to, and we don't have to like worry about that too much, because that then becomes another thing to worry about, right? So I love that you're mentioning that, Amanda, like that there's like, that's fine, and then we readjust, as we always will in life. We just keep readjusting.
Just having that real good quality education around that, to be able to not lose your mind in that moment of, oh my God, I've broken myself, which is something that I used to do often. If I'd do something that wasn't perfect with my eating, it wasn't a case of, oh, I just made this mistake, or I just had a fun night out, or whatever it was. It was literally, I'd broken everything, and oh my God, I needed to be punished as a result of doing that. So the education of working with someone like you becomes such an important part, because then we can start to see things and soften into ourselves a little bit better as well. And I
Yeah.
really love that you spoke to this idea of, yeah, working with the nervous system and how that impacts everything. And really, as you were talking about that, I just got a sense of just how synergistic our body really is, that the nervous system is such a beautiful entry point, working with the breath or working with other modalities to really go into our nervous system can support so much of everything else that's going on in our endocrine system, in our digestive system, our cardiovascular system. All of this happens in such a synergistic way that, yeah, we can't really expect to do it on our own and create all this change. I really love the way you describe working with different modalities to really support the entire system in order to get that nutritional part right and to get the results right with that nutrition.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's key. And you got to look at where the person's at and what their needs are. And I think Sarah might have mentioned trauma before, and that is a big piece in that I see amongst my clients, and knowing what modality is right for them, so where they're going to feel comfortable. And it might just be sometimes it's, acupuncture for them because actually just lying there and maybe not talking out necessarily what's happening is better for that person. Other people, kinesiology, psychology, psychotherapy, breath work, obviously, I always recommend, and I love it because I think it's something they could start with at home, with an app or in a small connection group, whether it's a small group in the local area as well. Meditation. And sometimes it's just, hey, can you try a yin yoga class once a week? That's a good entry point. And they're like, okay. I'm like, just to connect to their breath, to get them actually breathing in yoga is a good start there. So depending on the person would be where I'd guide them and how comfortable they are and what modality is going to work for them the best.
Yeah, it's I mean, I just love that you spoke to the nervous system in such a powerful component. And I mean, the nervous system is everywhere these days, also like in terms of how important it is, but it's true, right? Because it is like it's really governing everything. And so, yeah, like one of the things that I find is quite different about like FBR breathwork is that we actually move through unresolved patterns and or traumas, trauma, big T, small t, just anything that has impacted us internally in some way that has us be somewhat dysregulated. And that can be on either like throughout the full spectrum of what that means, dysregulation. But yeah, anything that helps someone move through the actual pattern that got them stuck in the first place, and then the nervous system naturally returns back to homeostasis. Because I work with the principle, and I guess, yeah, we work with the principle that the body wants to thrive. And the body wants to be healthy. That's what the body wants, right? So if it's not, it's like, why not, right? I mean, can get curious around that. And then, like you said, Amanda, we kind of need to look at what are the best pathways for this particular unique individual home into their own sense of thriving and homeostasis. And that will fundamentally look different than everyone else's because we're all different. And so I just love that we're now coming into a more fuller picture of health and what that actually means, and that it's so unique for each individual, and that is now actually being recognized in our practices with what you do with your nutrition and in our health practices and in breath work. And that we can call it more of an alternative approach, but it's actually not. It's just a way more nuanced and intelligent way of looking at the body. And we've been so conditioned into very simple thinking, but oversimplified. And we're coming really into nuance. And I love that you're doing this through the work that you do with your clients, and really bringing in that nuance. And because I think it's in the nuance also where we more fully feel met and seen in our needs. And ultimately, that's kind of what we're trying to resolve. So yeah, thank you so much for your work, Amanda. It's very inspiring. And yeah, really grateful for having had this conversation with you as well and learning a little bit more.
Mm. Before we go, I feel like many of our listeners and many of your clients, if you're working with women in their 40s and 50s, will be
Yeah.
parents. So I feel like it would be a big miss not to ask you about parenting and children's relationship with food as well. I really notice there's two things I've noticed from my daughter recently, who's 6. One is she's coming home quite scarily, asking about her body compared to other children's bodies. And the other thing she's doing is she's already talking about food in terms of a reward system. Like she won an award the other day. Oh, can I get a treat? And this word treat, I heard way back when that we should not be calling food, if you will, treats. So I'm really trying to move out of that. But she's 6 and that's the language she's already using. I just wonder if you had any thoughts or advice around how we frame food and build children's relationships with food.
Yeah, a couple of things that I do with my kids. So I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, 7-year-old boy and 5-year-old daughter. Number one, talking to them as food as medicine and just general everyday food. So not necessarily treat, what this food's doing for us so they understand and so they form that connection with the food and they go, oh, this is good for my cold or this is good for my eyes. And I think that's giving them the power as well. And I think that's really important. Secondly, I think with my daughter as well, first of all, kids are going to compare and that's comparison's a natural way of life. So looking at her, you said with your daughter, looking at her body, she's going to look at others and why am I different? And so talking to them about that and, all bodies are different but in a positive way and like your body's strong and, and this and using different descriptive language around their body. When it comes to rewards and with children, it's important. Firstly, we don't want to reward with food as much as we can. We've all done it. I've done it. But we want to try and reward with other things. So I'll use stickers, for example, or we'll put a coin in their jar and that can go towards their savings of something that they might want to get for themselves. So I do consciously try not to reward with food or use that word, treat or reward, and especially when it comes to high sugar kind of foods, those comfort foods. Because essentially, when we go back to the physical reaction it's having in the body, that is going to drive that loop of that kind of reward system, which the body's already wired that way. So we don't need to push it that way anymore. It's already a natural wiring, which I think is something we can't change. But I think we just want to be conscious of it and not to make that too much of a reward system with kids. But sometimes when my kids will go to a party and they come home with the lovely party bags, which, as a nutritionist, I just love those. When my kids I get asked so many times, what do you do? What do you do when your kids go to a kids party? I say, they're at a kids party. I'm going to allow them to eat what they want to eat. And when they come home and they've binged on all this sugar, and then they binge on the lolly bag on the way home, I say to them, you can have one thing. Choose one thing out of your lolly bag, and then we're going to pop that away and you can have it later. They get home and they want more. And say, well, how are you feeling in your body? Or I'll wait till they eat that sugar crash. How does that make you feel? I don't feel very good. My kids are really aware. They'll say to me, Mummy, I've got a sore tummy. I said, oh, do you think it's because we had all that chocolate and sugar at the party? Yeah, I do. I'm like, that's okay. That's all right. But why don't we eat some toast and have something else right now? We're not going to have any more of those lollies today because we're not feeling so good in our bodies. But you can have some more tomorrow. So it's not shaming them over having the food, but it's the awareness of how it's making their body feel. So it's, again, how's that going to serve you? I don't necessarily say no to sugar with my kids. My kids do eat sugar, but within reason. And also, I will question them, is that what your body needs right now? And how's it going to make you feel? And when they do have their crash and their tummy ache, I do talk to them about it and say, what do you think that was? And they say, yeah, I think I had 2 pieces of chocolate cake, Mummy. I'm like, and Oscar, my son, will say, maybe I don't need 2 pieces. I'm like, no, because you don't want to feel like that. You want to enjoy it, but also your body's now telling you that you don't feel good. So I think the discussion, don't be afraid to talk to them about how that food makes them feel. Because just as much as I say, you know, you need your protein to make you nice and strong, we need to be able to talk about the impact of the sugar on their body as well. And so my kids are super aware, and they can't tolerate dairy. But I don't necessarily stop them. At the parties, they eat what they want to eat, and they can have all the dairy, because you know what? They're going to get a sore stomach and they're going to come home and tell me. And they said, Mummy, I don't think I'm going to have that again. That made me feel unwell. So I think that's giving them that power back, and that awareness for me would be the biggest thing with kids.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think something that came out really strong in this conversation is this idea of reconnecting with food, and almost, I don't think the word was used, but what came up for me is this idea of ritual around food as well, as a way to bring back our connection or reconnect with food. So it might be Friday night dinners, or it might be going to the farmer's market. It might be your tea or cacao in the morning as part of a wider ritual. And I really love that, and maybe invite those listening to find moments to create reconnection through really beautiful ritual in your own lives. And I would also love to invite people to connect with you, Amanda. How can people find you, and what are the best ways to connect?
Yep. So I see clients online through online consultations, so all around Australia and around the world. I do practice on the northern beaches of Sydney as well, but predominantly online consultations. So people can find me on my website, which is apnutrition.com.au, and they can learn more about me and what I do, and they can always organise an appointment there, or also offer a free discovery call for everyone, which is a great little way to have a chat to me, what's going on for you, what your goals are, and perhaps, you know, how I can help you as well. So that's definitely something to take advantage of. I'm also on Instagram, amandapowell.nutrition. So I try and share valuable content. So tips, I'm very practical. So there's a lot of recipes, food ideas. I find that's what really helps people the most. And again, explaining why you want to have these foods, but really helping people with, this is exactly the product that I'd go and buy, for instance, because I think we mentioned before, there is so much out there with marketing, and there's so much confusion. I get confused. I walk down the aisle and I'll often come home and I've picked up the wrong thing. So I think that practical advice is really good. So that's how they can find me and work with me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
That's all right. Thanks for having me, guys.
As we close this conversation, we just want to come back to something simple. Taking care of our health doesn't have to mean doing everything perfectly. For many women, food and health have become wrapped up in rules, pressure, or the feeling that we should somehow be doing it better. But what today's conversation reminds us is that it doesn't have to be that complicated. Sometimes it starts with something much smaller, just paying attention, noticing your energy after a meal, noticing what helps you feel nourished, noticing what actually supports your body in the middle of your busy life. Because health isn't separate from you, it's something you're living every day. And like every other part of being human, your relationship with your body can shift over time. We'll keep exploring these conversations here on the podcast, all the different layers of what it means to be a woman, including the physical body that carries us through it all. Thanks so much for being here.
So that's all from us today. Thank you so much for tuning in to We Are Woman. I hope today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, to feel into, or to carry with you into the rest of your week. Please make sure to click subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss the latest episodes as they drop. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a woman that would find it helpful, because this isn't just our podcast, it's all of ours, together. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Are Woman Podcast to stay connected, share your thoughts, and join our growing sisterhood. We've got some very special events planned and would love for you to be a part of them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being exactly who you are.